Over here now, we had the issue of the hashtag ENDSARS protest that dovetailed into setting up of panels of inquiry to investigate police brutality and extrajudicial killings. And variably, we've been seeing reports being submitted, amongst which includes that of the Lagos State, which is generating reactions over the leaked report and the indictment of the army, the Lekki concession company, the police, and all that is engulfed in this. Having this discussion with me, starting from my extreme left, I have a public affairs analyst, Fred Oyigwe. Fred Oyigwe is also a politician and also one-time aspirant in the Edo governorship race. Thanks for joining me, Fred.
Thank you for having me.
And next to Fred, I have the president of Association for Formidable Education and Development, an educationist at that, and of course a social media influencer and a public affairs analyst, Osagie Godsent Erunse. Thanks for joining me, Osagie.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
It's quite been a long time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Just busy.
All right, great. Doing business.
Yeah, making money. It's important.
And so close to him, I have a political economist, and he is Ibrahim Momo. Thanks for joining me, Ibrahim.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, distinguished viewers.
All right, let me start with you, Fred. We have been having issues about the hashtag ENDSARS protest, and we have witnesses, some witnesses who are saying that they were attacked from the leaked report in the Lagos panel, and also even the member of the panel, one Adirogboa, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria, also talking about threats to life. What do you make of this? Because we have a leaked document, and the police was indicted, the army indicted, the Lekki concession company indicted. What are your thoughts along this?
We have so degenerated to a position where important decisions, important matters are treated with levity in this nation. A 7-man panel was constituted to investigate the massacre, as they now term it, of the ENDSARS protest, which was in the first place very unfortunate that is the way the federal government or the government failed to curtail what they term to be an unacceptable criticism. It was a peaceful protest to all intents and purposes. For the 7 days the protest ran, there was no violence by the protesters, and their demands were made clear to the federal government until the penultimate day, when, as the governor of Lagos eventually owned up, he invited the military. Prior to that time, many politicians of note had gone to meet with the protesters to talk to them and to see how they could peacefully resolve, the protests and address their grievances. But it was just unfortunate that was the attacking the protesters, the way the military and the police did was the way they chose to do it. And in their report, they said 9 died, 4 were left for dead who survived, and over 20-something injured.
About 33.
About 33 injured. But one of those who was left for dead said he counted 11 dead that were with him. So even that figure is not so sure. Given the fact that they also tried to conceal their actions that night and remove evidence of their activities that night. But that the members of the panel are now being threatened and now also fear for their lives.
And even
it's just a continuation of that same attitude that made them go there in the first place, to try to quell them using violence, to try to quell a non-violent and peaceful protest.
We even have reports where even one Miss Ibe Kamsuchuku had deep cutlass blows with deep cuts and able to unveil the bones, as reports have it. Now, these are really life-threatening. A situation where some are asking, how do we secure the lives of these witnesses and the members of the panel? Because the one thing is sure, the report has been leaked, and there could be an avenue for such attacks and threats. What are your thoughts?
Let me just quickly say this. So it's because we do not have consequences for our actions.
Okay.
If there were consequences for such actions, if the police is substantially fined for actions that are not acceptable to the public, then they will begin the administrative arm of the police, the administrators of the police, the senior officers, will begin to think about their strategies in addressing such issues.
Okay, let's look
Yes.
at your opinion.
Let me
is sure, the aspect of securing the lives of the members who have just submitted the report and the witnesses.
Let me first of all commend the bravery, the courage, the tenacity of the panelists that sat in Lagos to determine the Lekki toll gate shooting and the outcome of the ENDSARS in Lagos in particular. Just yesterday, I think Adamawa panel also submitted their report. And I want to use this avenue to call on the 28 states of the Federation that set up such panel to follow suit. You see, Phil, there's a common saying in our street language: if you say something, you will die. If you don't see anything, you will die. Where in the world do soldiers get involved with peaceful protests? Is it not laughable that a certain judicial panel, which is legal and constitutional, have been set up, and they have come up with their report? Now, the government have not officially brought out their white paper, and we have a leakage, and suddenly we are having attacks. Now, the question is, you start asking, this leaves you with a whole lot of questions. What do we play politics with everything? Because in some certain quarters, for some people, it is an indictment of possibly the party in power.
Okay, but let's not forget what the general even said, looking about the army chief, where he said that the army will not involve in such ignoble acts, and that it would be a shame for us to really disparage the soldiers who are the army officers who are really out there protecting the territorial integrity of the country. What do you make to that statement?
Let me quickly say that he has said protect the territorial integrity of the country. Now, this is a protest. This has nothing to do with the threats of our territorial integrity. But the point is, my concern about this whole stuff is, first of all, let me say that this is one issue that cannot be swept under the carpet. The world is changing, and it's sad to say that our political class refuse to recognize that. They refuse to learn with what happened to the renowned and one-time almighty Chancellor. They refuse to learn with what happened recently, or just some years ago, with the flood case. They refuse to realize that we are in a technology-driven world. For me, everybody involved, we go in for it. Because things are changing. It's no longer business as usual. If the soldiers are at the end of the day, with the panel have already said, because when this whole issue happened, when we saw footage and camera, the Minister of Information came and said it wasn't true. Even the Attorney General said they were fake soldiers that wear other uniforms and just posed in the Lekki toll gate. But now, the panel investigation report is showing otherwise. Now, the point is it not laughable? Is it not a mockery to our nationality that when the people that runs the law, interpret the law, are sat down on the matter, then the next thing we are seeing is attacks. It is laughable. I'm calling on the government of the day to bring such people to book, like what Honorable said. When the social justice of a nation is not trusted, what I mean in terms of implementation, in terms of calling people to book, then people will have the audacity to go against it, to do what they want with the hope that they can always get away with it.
All right,
this is where we are.
Okay, the United Nations and even the U.S. Government are really applauding this development in terms of what what you called it, the tenacity, or let's say the dexterity of the panel, to really submit that report and what it entails, the restitution, the conclusions. Now, do you see it, because the U.S. government and UN did say that this is a way of accelerating the justice system? Do you see this, because on one side we have the laudable comments, and on the other side we have the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, saying that this is a phantom massacre, seeing it as a figment of one's imagination. Now, how do we bridge this? How do we bring this to a fusion where we can say that that panel report will be exhaustively treated upon?
Well, thank you very much. I think that's what is lacking in public discourse. The first thing is that you have protagonists and you have antagonists. Everybody is speaking from the point of view of whether an antagonist will report or a protagonist. And that is not how we ought to look at the reports.
Okay.
And which is the point you made, and the UN, of course, and the US have made correctly, that what we are looking at, we should be more focused on justice, not attacks and counter-attacks, which is where I find it. First of all, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry was not on the Lekki massacre. It was on, it had a title, and this was, like I pointed out, in 28 states. It's doing though. It's not about the Lekki massacre. It's about the Judicial Panel of Inquiry, that's the title, on restitution of SARS-related abuses and other matters.
But it also carries investigation on the Lekki target. What was back?
No, I'm talking about the report generally.
Okay.
And other related matters.
Oh, yes.
That's the title of even the report has been that title of the report.
Yeah.
So the first thing we need to clear our heads, it's not about Lekki. It's not only about Lekki. Even though other related matters now involves Lekki. Secondly, is that fundamentally the protest was about SARS and the abuses, which actually led to the banning. And if in case people have forgotten, this Judicial Panel of Inquiry is one of those 5 for 5 demands that were presented by the protesters. That Judicial Panel of Inquiry should be set up across the country to investigate these issues. So it didn't start with the Lekki massacre. Because if we now pivot, because people are now so interested, I think the debate, I'm so disappointed really. But particularly those who are protagonists. One of the challenges about the protagonists is leaking the reports. And those Judicial Panel submitted reports about 2 months ago. You have not seen that report in public space. I think Lagos was the 7th city to submit the reports. It is illegal. It's against the oath of office of members of those panels to have leaked that report. If you look at what Ebun, Oluwa, or Adegoluwa said,
yes,
that if government is not faithful in what
he's going to bring out the copy that he has.
After the government has made what the first thing people should see is the white paper by government. That is what is actionable. All other things like this waste of time. You can't. First of all, it is even the members have agreed that it is the UTREP. I was on a sister station saying that it is the only difference is that it is riddled with a lot of errors, typographical errors.
Okay, but again, are you faulting Aderobowa for saying that? Because because that questions sincerity of purpose on the part of the government.
That procedure is that the first thing people should see is the white paper.
Okay.
After which you cannot react. You do that what is on this public space now, it's illegal, it is of no use, like a tissue paper. If government now acts, really the white paper that runs counter to the reports that the JPI submits, then members of the panel can come out and say, no, this is not what, because it is the government, the donor, that power to investigate was given by the state government of Lagos. It is not social media that they got the power to investigate. and it was funded by, so I think so, what I've seen in public space, and which is what international bodies, the US and the UN, and indeed in your question has pointed out the fact that we have left the issue of justice to the dustbin. And we are now, because what it does, what social media ranting does, is that it reinforces those who were insisting that there was a massacre.
Okay.
And it is also reinforcing the position of those, it's the same thing, the same people, they're not attacking the personalities who were in that panel. That it is a preconceived notion that they are putting to,
okay.
It only reinforces the initial position.
Now, February, as we round off in 2 minutes, let's look at the will of the government in tackling the recommendations of the panel report.
The government has said that they are waiting on the reports, and they cannot act on the reports until they have received them. Okay? And like you have said, just about 7 or 8 of the states have released their reports.
Have submitted.
Submitted.
No one
we are with the white paper, which is the final report.
And to come to the point that our friend here made, that we are in a technology-driven war.
Yeah.
Now, information dissemination is different from what it used to be. So, very rightly, and in disagreement to my gentleman here, is that it was right for those who released the report illegally to do so, because excuse me, it was right.
As a check, you are saying it was right for
morality, because
for the purpose of checking the authority,
checking the government,
okay,
to see what kind of white paper they want to present in reaction to the report that was submitted to them.
But he said he applauded it, didn't you?
So the government could provide a white paper that has no resemblance to the reports that they received.
Okay,
so in releasing that report, the public now is aware of what the content of the report is.
Okay, so what are you expecting from the government in taking drastic actions after the white paper has been released?
Yes, we are expecting from the government now to fairly treat that report.
Those who are indicted?
Yes, and those who are indicted to be punished.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Let me borrow from the word of Saulu. History will judge the government of the day, whether the Lagos State government or the 28 states and the federal government, either on the right side of history or negatively. This is an opportunity for us to redefine justice. For me, it's a call for justice.
Yes, it is.
You can't just kill people that are harmless, people that are carrying out an act within the ambit of their constitutional right. And don't also forget that we're flying the Nigeria flag, singing the national anthem, which shows that we really don't have respect.
But again, the governor did say, the governor of Lagos State was saying that, well, they didn't see anybody coming, even at the morgue, crying over their dead. And so, does that not make it phantom, like what the Minister of Information said?
That's not true. Like we said, there are footage.
Is this so difficult?
Number two, is
this so difficult to invite? I mean, people were.
It's not even difficult to trace it.
People were invited to testify at the panel, and many people came forward to testify.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those who lost their lives, those who lost their friends,
they came forward.
members, they came forward.
Okay.
And that's how they determined that so many people actually died during the protest.
Okay, back to you.
Let me quickly say this. You need to know the character of the panelists. These are sons. These are not sons. There is one son, but they are precedent. A former inspector general of police. Then besides that, the credibility of the people that were there, even if they are not signed yet, these are not people that can just make up a report. And besides,
at least they have integrity.
Of course, besides, you know, when it comes to court issues, it is based on the evidence. Okay, the army were invited, the police were invited.
Okay, so what's appeal for the government?
People, justice. The people that have perpetrated this evil is an evil against our nationality. If this trend is not stopped, now, just imagine the trend. Let me quickly say things. Till date, it is a threat for a sitting government to see a protest. Why should it be a threat? A peaceful protest. I mean, all over the federation, even till now, the moment there is a peaceful protest and it seems to be against government policy, you see everywhere standing up and say, what are they doing? Why must it be so? Those are my questions. And our police brutality still stopped. We have to ask ourselves that question even after that.
That's the
when
challenge.
people know that, I've had several experiences, even of recent, along here, man. You need to see how those police guys that stays just after duty, how they attack young people.
Okay, I think we're going to treat that. We're going to have another conversation.
Young people.
We're going to have another conversation to treat that. Thank you. We're going to have another conversation to treat that. Let's get a viewpoint in 2 minutes as we wrap up.
Okay, well, quickly.
On the way the government should go.
I think that the first thing, that those states that have received reports, they should issue a white paper. So that it is not a white paper. You see, one thing people don't know is that even when the government releases a white paper, you can go to court if you are not comfortable with it. You know, you can go to court and challenge government's resolutions.
And be sure that the court won't be infiltrated upon by the executive.
Yes, because no, these are issues that we can open. So the first thing I said from government is that they should, as quickly the state governors, because the state governors are set up, and those who have not submitted their report, 1 year and 1 month is more than enough to wrap up whatever activity or investigation you are doing.
What is the percentage of those who have won cases against the government in our courts?
No, the government does not have a rep here. We are saying
courts are influenced by the government of the day.
Okay, you still have the floor, Ibrahim. Finish on your point. You still have the floor.
Our courts are influenced by the government of the day.
No, we should, even on such a little bit more coordinated.
Go ahead. Use your time.
I think that the first thing is that the government, which is born made, the government should release white paper. Those are not submitted, JPI that are not submitted across the country should submit. Secondly is that there should be justice, restitution, as the panel says, restitution for the victims of police brutality. And
thank you so much. I am very sure we're going to do this again. Big thanks, because I expect that you really have not ventilated your opinions as such. Fedu Igwe and of course Usage Godsend and of course Ibrahim Momo. Big thanks for taking our time to be part of this.
Thank you.
It's still this morning on ITV. Do stay with me.